Yo, 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 it's your boy. Um, this is a serious video. Not really. I mean, kinda. Um, I have been wanting to make a little video for my own sake, which is always the case, about um relationships and not just talking about relationships in general, although that will be partly what this is going to be probably, but more so kind of an idea of like giving myself something to look back on, or not even that, but like kind of forcing myself to get my priorities um, kind of out verbally before I get into a relationship, because there is a chance that that might be happening in the near future. Um, I got out of a breakup, let's see, a little over almost 3 months ago. Because, yeah, it was at the beginning of October and it's almost the beginning of January. Yeah, almost 3 months since I had my breakup with Meg. And I feel pretty good about that. Um, I think that's something that is kind of the central point of why I'm even thinking about making a video like this. I think the title of it will probably be something like things to think about, or watch this before you get into a relationship. You know, something kind of clickbaity and funny, but in reality, I just kind of want to check myself before I get into a relationship again. And I don't know. I've had a lot of thoughts about like how I even want to do something like this and what the point of it is. And I think really, like I said before, it's for me and kind of just being able to talk through things and feel more confident about the choices that I may or may not be making pretty soon. Um, so like I said, I just got a relationship a little under 3 months ago. Dated for a year and a half. Um, and the reason that we broke up, one of the reasons we broke up, I guess, was because she had feelings for my sister, which is always a funny thing to say. um, and I laugh at that, but it truly was a painful thing at the time. But it wasn't an entirely surprising concept that she might have had feelings for my sister. And also that there's so much to it in terms of like how those feelings were kind of being perceived by me subtly, and like how much I really realized it even before I found out the truth of her admitting that. But regardless, I honestly, 3 months out from the relationship now, I think there were so many other things that caused the relationship to go downhill. I mean, the relationship was going downhill long before it even ended. Um, Last 6 months were really the biggest decline, and we almost broke up a few months before we actually did break up. For reasons having to do with her questioning her sexuality and if she wanted to be with women, any woman versus me, which was again also another painful thing at the time. I remember, um, but I don't know. There was always kind of a sense of okayness with all of it. Whatever kind of things that she was struggling with, I felt okay about. I think truthfully, my sense of attachment to relationships has gotten to a level where I feel pretty comfortable with it, but sometimes I question if I was not attached enough. I guess in comparison to her and also just in general. Um, and I guess there's no like measurement of what is a good amount of attachment to have, but I always felt a sense of, I would be okay if things ended. Um, and I don't know. Obviously, like things change a lot over the course of a long relationship like that. I mean, relatively long. When you're dating someone for a year and a half, so it's like when you first meet them, the first however many months, you are fucking infatuated with them. You're, in the honeymoon phase, and things are really fun and interesting and new. Um, and as that's happening, you don't really even question anything. At least if things are going well, you're just like having a great time. And at that point, I think it obviously would have hurt more. I mean, it would have hurt differently to lose someone during that period versus losing them after being in a relationship for a long time. Um, but I don't know. I guess at those beginning times, it always feels like there's a sense of this isn't gonna end. Like things are going really well, right? Um, I've never really, well, that's not true. I have experienced that where I was like in the honeymoon phase and I had a breakup. So like I think there was a couple moments in my past where I was dating someone for I think a month and she ended up breaking up with me, which was also one of the only times I was broken up with because she was experiencing really, really heavy mental health issues and having to do with self harm and other things. And yeah, I took it really hard though at the time because I was super into her. I remember, but got through that fairly quickly, even though it was kind of a intense little uh, contained thing. And then there was another relationship that was like 3 months long. Again, both in the honeymoon phase, both fairly intense feeling. But that other one was very weird because my feelings kind of died off within those first few months, and I had never really experienced something like that where I was like, "Oh shit, I don't think I feel as strongly as for this person as I feel like I should," in a relationship, which was a really guilty feeling too. Um, but also, I mean, it was a real sense of like this isn't fair to the other person, like, and I think realistically in any kind of relationship that's starting fresh, like there's always that chance that like one person starts to feel not invested. And there's there's no blame to be cast there. Like there's so many factors that can make someone not feel like totally connected and into what's happening within the first few months of a relationship. And even before that, obviously, like just getting to know someone, that's usually the most volatile time. And that's the time that I'm in right now with this new person. But things are going really well so far with this new person, and I'm going to meet them for the first time next week, which is crazy. It's the first time that I've ever met someone online, talked to them for like a month, and uh, planned to like fly 2,000 miles across the country to meet them. Such a crazy fucking concept. Um, it's wild to think about, but it honestly is. It's pretty cool. It's really gone hand in hand with this slight urge that I've had to just do something a bit different off the path, um, on a personal level, and it seems like it's also been similar for her, which is a cool feeling to kind of be like, oh shit, like you're experiencing the same kind of desire to do something different that I am, and you're living across the country, and we just fucking by chance happened to start talking and connected romantically in some ways and lots of other ways. So it's just yeah, it's a really unique, interesting, cool experience, and I'm excited about it. But at the same time, I think there's a sense of trepidation within me, and that's why I'm making this video to kind of, like I said, check myself and be like, hey man, like what do you what's important to you going into this? And like I have always had a sense of like what's important to me in a relationship, and obviously that's a very fluid thing that changes a lot over time based on experiences and everything. But I think it's good to just like get a benchmark for my own sake and really get it on video so maybe I can look back on it and be like, oh shit, like this is where your head was at before you were involved and invested into a relationship, because I think your mental space really changes once you're actually in a relationship. um I don't know, at least I've felt that way, and that's part of that concept kind of spooks me a little bit. Not in like a oh my god, like being invested in someone and being vulnerable is scary. That doesn't scare me so much as just the inevitable changing of the way that you kind of mentally interact with your life when you're in a relationship versus when you're not. And it feels almost unavoidable, right? Like when you're in a relationship with someone, at least to me, it feels like there's an automatic sort of consideration that your brain starts to put in front of many other things that it usually doesn't. Like when I'm in love with someone and I feel truly invested in them, there's always something in my head that's like, okay, I'm thinking of this person when I do this, or when I'm thinking about doing this, or when I'm, and it's not with everything, right? Like I can still be like, all right, well, I'm gonna fucking still pursue like working out, or I'm still gonna fucking read my books and watch my shows, like, and not really think twice about it. But with a lot of things that occur in your mind, there's definitely more of a kind of background pressure, I guess, of like, okay, there's another person to consider. Um, and I don't know, it also just like changes your priorities of what's important to you when you're thinking about a lot of aspects of your life, work, friendships, hobbies, all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, it really does mix things up a bit. And I think it obviously varies a lot based on what type of relationship that you've nurtured and that you're creating with this person, but like it still feels like there's that inevitable sort of shift, and it could be a really good thing in a lot of ways. I think in realistically, it is a really good mirror for like seeing the parts of yourself that you may need to work on or want to work on. um and honestly, being challenged in a lot of ways that you're not used to is very helpful for growth. And there's always this there's this thing that I remember reading once of like, it's in The Power of Now, one of my favorite books, and he talks about relationships at one point, and he's basically saying that one of the parts he was saying that whether you're in a relationship or not, um, you're still gonna suffer, right? And you're still gonna have to deal with, the struggles of trying to be present, trying to be at peace, trying to create joy. There's no right or wrong when it comes to being single or being in a relationship. You're still going to have to face all of these things, and there's no this is preferable or that is preferable. Which I do tend to agree with in most situations. Obviously, there's a spectrum of relationships that would not be good for you know your own mental health and overall spiritual well-being. Um, but at the same time, there's also something that can happen when you're single, I believe, which is just complacency and kind of being okay, like with things that maybe you shouldn't be okay with, because there's no one really there to reflect things back on you and maybe even point things out that are holding you back. I think there's immense value in having some kind of partnership where you can really point things out in someone in a respectful, kind way and help them become a better person, and also be able to help yourself better because of that person just nurturing you and kind of having your back in a lot of ways. I think there's like a ton of value in that. And I think that's why I seek out relationships in a lot of ways. I think there's just so much potential for growth, at least for me. And at this point in my life, I'm feeling a pull towards relationships, which is weird because I just got out of a relationship like 3 months ago. And I think usually when people hear like, oh, I dated this person for a year and a half, I just broke up with them 3 months ago. Like there was like the situation with her catching feelings for my sister. Like people are like, what the fuck? That's traumatic. That's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, in some ways. And obviously you can interpret it this way or that way, depending on your situations and experiences. But like for me, I'm okay with it. And I was okay with it. There was no resistance to the events that transpired, right? Like as soon as I found out that my ex did have feelings for my sister, I knew that it was done, and I broke up with her immediately. So I don't know. Like obviously there was pain involved in that, but the level of suffering that I experienced because of that, it was not super high. Um, it obviously does hurt. There is pain involved in losing someone, and there's grieving involved in, someone not being in your life anymore suddenly. But there was also not a suddenness to as much of a suddenness to it as it sounds when I explain it to people. Like I was saying before, there was a gradual kind of letting go because we did almost break up months before we actually did break up. And there was a gradual decline in our relationship where I was even starting to question whether I wanted to be in the relationship. So, as fucked up as it is, like I was having thoughts about ending the relationship as well. Now that I really, really think about it, and that's not something that I just realized, but like there were multiple points where I was days where I was like, okay, like maybe I should really consider ending this. Which is weird. It's such a weird feeling to have when like there's no tangible problems in your relationship, or at least like nothing overt. Like we generally had a pretty nice relationship in a lot of ways, a pretty like calm, like reasonable relationship, but there was so much complacency and so much non-movement, which is just another word for complacency, but like I don't know, I felt so stuck at points in that relationship, and I hate that feeling. And it wasn't her fault necessarily, but there was a lot of situations and things that she was going through that just held her back. And coincidentally, I also felt held back because I was living with her, and we were intertwined with the way that we were living our lives a lot of the time. And so I don't know, when someone is experiencing like deep depression and having mental health struggles, and dealing with grief and trauma and all this stuff, it does rub off on you a bit. It has to. And it did. And I don't regret kind of being there for that. I think there's value in that as well. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just a small amount of time. It was really on and off for most of the relationship. And there was very little respite in like feeling like my partner was like okay, there were a lot of points too where she was telling me how not okay she was and how much she was struggling, and I appreciated that openness, but it was also really fucked to like know that like my partner is deep in the depths of um being depressed and just going through shit, while I was generally feeling pretty good mentally throughout all of the relationship. It was such a weird dichotomy that we had. And don't get me wrong, like she joined me sometimes in feeling really good about things, but it was fairly brief in most moments. And yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of a weird back and forth thing where I just wanted to keep moving forward and keep growing, but there was just not much growth happening on her end, and I felt guilty at points. And I remember she also was like felt this power dynamic of like you're better than me, which makes me feel it made me feel awful at the time because I'm like I don't want to feel better than you. Um Obviously like the things that you're looking at in terms of how you're doing in life, such arbitrary measurements, right? Like they don't actually mean anything. But in a sense, she was, right in feeling like you're happier than I am. Like objectively, I think I was, and I, had some level of peace to the way that I was living, and I think she saw that and felt that. And so I remember her feeling guilty about just holding me back, and it was, God, there was a conversation where she was like saying how she was like imagining me with other people, and felt a sense of happiness and also a sense of like dread and kind of sadness because obviously she still had feelings for me. And it was such a weird thing, but it was such an open, honest like thing to admit. Like if there's one thing I did really appreciate about her in that relationship was like how open she was about everything. She was brutally honest, which is such a great quality to have in a partner. But it sucks when someone is brutally honest about the dark reality of their own experience, and that reality is really what brought the relationship down a lot of the time, as fucked up as that may sound. It's just like when you're going through shit hard enough, like it's impossible for it to not have a damper on your relationships, romantic or not. Um, and I remember talking to her about that many times, and um, I don't know. It was such a weird, guilty thing a lot of the time because I'm like, I don't want to make you feel bad for being depressed, but I also don't want to accept that our relationship is just this way, which was not good for a lot of it. Um, and again, I think it's mostly like centered around the last 6 months, but I don't have an exact measurement of that. Um, but anyways, I think one of the things that's tricky to do going forward is like noticing like how much you're biased because of your last relationship experience and like how much you're trying to go the opposite direction of that. Like all of the things that were major problems in my last relationship, my ex having really struggled with mental health issues, depression, her sexuality, um various issues, and then like trying hard not to, just be looking for those opposites in another person, um and purely seeking that. There is some sense of like, of course you should try and take those things and grow and like learn from them, but you don't want to just look at those things on their own and be like, okay, I'm going to do the opposite of that, because there's a lot more nuance to it than that. um and especially as a person, like every person is so unique, so like if you're going to look for the opposite of those things and you find them in another person, they may be that way, but they also might have a whole new set of issues that are more difficult to deal with than just those issues. So you don't want a tunnel vision on just that. And I try not to do that. And really, with this new person, I've been trying to really get a broad sense of like who she is, what she's about, how she views life, um, and just really get to know her as a person rather than as someone that I just met after my ex and started talking to, and someone that am trying to um, kind of not make, but like trying to seek someone who is just the opposite of my ex in the negative ways that that she was, like it's just a weird thing. And I don't think I'm doing that. I'm trying my best not to do that. And honestly, like it's been really cool to talk to someone and be like, wow, like you are so different than any person I've ever met and talked to. Every person that I've ever dated has been incredibly unique. And obviously there's similarities here and there, just human similarities, but the the full set of traits and characteristics and mannerisms and ways that they interact with people and the relationship and all these different little facets, they're unique. Really, the whole, when you look at it as a whole, it's so unique. And then the clash of the way I am with that is such an interesting thing to me. I don't know, it almost feels kind of like addictive to experience that. And I can see why like people do a lot of like dating around and like hopping from one person to the next, because it's like that initial exhilaration of getting to know someone and like, those first steps of a potential new relationship or even just a fling are exciting. They really are, and they're very alluring and interesting and like mysterious, and I don't know, there's just so many things that are cool about it. So I'm trying my best to enjoy that without like kind of becoming engrossed in it too much. And also just like looking towards the future and being realistic about like what do I want out of this? What do I see myself getting into, like if this plays out in certain ways. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because like I'm meeting her next week in Seattle, right? Spending a whole weekend together plus one day. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's also another interesting experience is like spending days with someone when you first meet them, like in a row, is not usual. Like, well, depends. Like I've had that experience too, where I started talking to someone and we hung out multiple times within like a week, and really hit it off. But it's different because we've been talking for a month, haven't met, have only FaceTime, talked on the phone, texted, whatever. And then meeting in person is like a whole another set of things, right? It's a whole another set of experiences to kind of experience. And it's super fucking interesting and fun and nervous and all the things, all the feelings, really. So yeah, I don't know. I'm super geeked about it mostly, but it is it is such a wild thing that I'm doing that really a lot of people will never do. Um, and honestly, something I never thought I would do, but here I am, and there really is a sense of like, at least for me, like life is just taking me where it wants to, or like the river, the flow of life is just kind of going in this direction, and it feels right. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that, but like with this in particular, I'm like, yeah, like this doesn't feel wrong, right? Like I don't feel like I'm doing something wrong, or like there's some conflict, internal conflict that I'm having with what I'm choosing to do and thinking about doing. Um, but I guess also there is something to be said about like once you're actually in it, that's when you get the true pulse of like how you feel about it. Because everything is conceptual until it's reality. So I don't know. We will see how it actually is in person, but I have just a really good feeling about it. I really do. Based on everything that I've experienced so far with this person. And it's cool because she feels the same way, you know? And there's just a mutualness to kind of everything that we've been experiencing with each other so far, which is nice, you know? It is really nice to be like on the same page about damn near everything. I mean, obviously, you know, there's never a person that's just exactly like you and, you know, everything. That would just be boring, right? Like, we all know that. We all know it would just be boring to find someone that's a carbon copy of you and just works the same way and you guys fit into each other perfectly and you, you know, you fuck the same way and you think the same way and you eat the same way. It would just be boring. So there's all these little differences that I'm really keen to see in person and really experience, but I've also seen and kind of noticed little things even before we've met, and nothing that's glaringly bad or awful or weird. It's just like little, you know, differences in things that we like, ways that we talk, ways that we interact with the world, you know, normal shit, and nothing that's like obviously a deal breaker. I guess that's something that's interesting to talk about is deal breakers, because it's such an interesting concept that I've thought about a lot throughout all my relationships. I still have this fucking thing on my phone of somewhat kind of deal breakers that I have. Um, yeah, it's like what does the ideal relationship look like? What makes a relationship work slash not work, which are kind of like deal breakers. So yeah, I think I do agree with a lot of these. So let's just go through them. The first one is a lack of communication slash communication problems. In parentheses, anger, manipulation, gaslighting, avoiding problems, making things less of a deal than they are or more of a deal. Yeah, I mean, this is very general, but like, obviously, not communicating is going to kill a relationship. Um, and if you try and communicate with anger, manipulation, gaslight, yeah, like this is obvious shit. These are things that clearly I had experienced in the past and most people have experienced. So, like, obviously, general things, but like what communication means to me now, it's a whole nother thing. It really is. It's not this simple. I mean, obviously, yeah, you don't want to fall into those obvious traps of being manipulative, angry, whatever. Um, but communication now is so complicated to me in a lot of ways, and not in like, oh my god, it's like you can't do it properly because it's so complicated. But like, there's just so much nuance to it, and actually learning how to communicate properly with a romantic partner. But I also do think it can be pretty simple. There's a lot of different communication styles, a lot of different ways that people like to communicate. For example, like my ex liked to write in order to communicate, which was cool. Although it kind of contrasted with me wanting to talk more. So I think generally, obviously, I do better with someone who's a lot more talkative and wants to talk things out versus likes to internally process and then write or communicate later. I like to communicate more upfront and immediately rather than holding things in and processing them and then communicating, which is something I've ran into a lot with past partners. Now that I think about it, I don't know. I do think generally good communication does involve like nipping things in the bud to some degree, right? if you get upset or angry or whatever in a situation, I think it's really important to communicate that you are feeling that thing, and you nip it in the butt right away rather than let it fester. So like I can understand why some people want to process things, but at the same time, little small things don't need to necessarily be processed and internalized and all this stuff because they're small. You can deal with them in the moment with your partner if you have a strong sense of communication and an ability to just be honest and open. So I think that is important inherently, no matter what your communication style is. Um, and there's like, I guess it also has to do with like attachment styles and shit, which I don't know a lot about off the top of my head, but I don't know. I think some people are obviously avoidant. Some people are more, I don't like, I don't know. I guess it is kind of clear cut and dry when I think about it. Like when it comes to what good communication is in my head versus what's not. Because I've experienced so much of what's not good communication at this point. And I also have experienced some good communication. Good communication. Don't get me wrong. Like I was saying, my ex was actually fairly honest and open, and I was also that way with her. So like that was a great experience to have. And I've also experienced that with other partners as well, to some degree. But it's always kind of been a back and forth. I think ideally you got to have an open line all the time, 24/7 hotline of communication. It can't just be like, oh, I'll communicate sometimes, but actually this thing that you want to talk about, I don't want to talk about it. Obviously there's certain things that are like stickier, spikier topics and things that you want to be more careful with at times, but I think it's important to talk about things that are relevant to the moment, and also relevant to your overall health of your relationship, right? I think it's really important to communicate about generally how your relationship is going, how you feel about it. I think a lot of people get lost in just like living their day to day life, especially if you live with your partner and you just keep going and going and going. And sometimes you forget to check in and be like, hey, are you feeling good about this? Like, and not even as on the nose as that, but like, am I bothering you in any way? Are there any things I can do to make your life easier? Am I, just like little things, I think you can kind of tweak and kind of check in on to make sure that things are working well for both of you and not just one person, and not, um, not working for one person. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I definitely had that experience living with someone for the first time and noticing how easy it can be to become complacent in that way. And I'll fault myself there a little bit too. I think it does become very easy, regardless of if you are good at communicating or not, to just be like, oh, like they aren't communicating, so I'm not gonna like make an effort, right? Or like they're depressed or like they're whatever, so I'm not gonna, try and, you know, keep on trying to talk to them, which, to be fair, it's like everything is a two-way street. So like if you keep on trying and trying and trying, eventually you're going to give up if the other person's not trying as well. So if it's just one-sided, then that's bound to die. But there's other factors. There's so many other factors for why someone is not able to communicate properly. And I do have sympathy for that, obviously, and like things come up in relationships, whether it's like personal trauma or like personal things that are going on that kind of keep someone occupied mentally and unable to kind of be as emotionally vulnerable and open as maybe they should be. So I get that, but it should be temporary, short little stints of, maybe not communicating as much as you should. But even then, hopefully you have a good enough foundation to kind of ride that wave out and still, um, communicate in some ways, right? Um, but yeah, I think that sums up my feelings about communication. The next one was indifference, dispassion, non-commitment, half-assedness. You have to generally care about the relationship to a level that makes sense to me / is equal, complete commitment, or none at all. Again, another no-brainer. I don't know when I wrote this, probably like after my second long-term relationship, which was like 2019, 2020, 2019 more so. Maybe, I don't know, it could have been various points, but anyways, yeah, I mean, this is true though. Like, I do think it is something that happens in relationships where people kind of become indifferent. They become not as passionate about it. Um, there's sort of a half-assedness that people will develop after being in a relationship for a while. And hell, even I've experienced that too. Like, I feel like I was not giving as much as I could have or should have, and at points in my past relationships. And obviously, I can maybe even blame that on, the relationship kind of uh, going down the shit pipe, and becoming dispassionate because of that, and maybe a lack of effort from the other person or things that they were doing that made me feel that way. But at the same time, it's like everything in a relationship is a two-way street. Like, if things are going downhill, it's both people's responsibility to kind of try and save it, I believe. So I guess really the thing is, like, if people don't recognize that, or I mean, if they feel like one person is more responsible than the other, then that's obviously not going to work. Um, and I haven't really experienced that so much, but like, I don't know, things just need to be equal in a lot of ways. And obviously, like I was saying before, sometimes personal things come up and like you're not able to give your full energy and love to the relationship at all times, but those should be temporary, right? And you always got to come back to like, hey, like this person matters a whole fucking lot to me and I love them, so I need to keep on trying. So I guess not giving up on yourself and the relationship is really important, regardless of what happens in your personal life. You have to have a sense of resiliency, I think, and that kind of reflects in your relationship, because if you don't have that resiliency, then your relationship's not going to have that resiliency. And I guess that's another thing that's really interesting is like every fault that you have, every way of being that kind of hinders you is going to show up in the relationship one way or another, which is why I say it's one of the greatest mirrors, if not the greatest mirror that you can have in life, is just being with someone and noticing all those little things or not noticing them, and ignoring them. But yeah, I think that's really the point. Is like you'll know if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not able to bounce back from certain things, if you're not able to keep living, because your relationship will feel those effects, and you'll notice things pretty quickly. So yeah, I think it's always a great source of like checking yourself is checking the relationship. Like, oh, is this working? Oh, it's not working. Then what's going on with me? Right? Not always the case that like there's something going on with you or you're not doing something right, but a lot of the times it is. Like most of my relationship struggles really have been someone experiencing a personal struggle or something that's hindering them, and then that becoming festering in the relationship, or just like a lack of general self-care that has always existed and that just got magnified as the relationship went on. That was definitely the case in my last relationship. um, Not being able to take care of yourself and then having the results of that kind of reflect in the relationship and on the other person. um, Becoming overdependent, becoming uh, putting too much weight on another person can easily ruin a relationship. I've experienced that for sure. Um, but yeah, I think that's a valid point by me. The next one is respect, understanding the way I want to live my life as an individual, in parentheses, spirituality, work, education, hobbies, etc., etc. I say that all the time, as well as a general respect when talking to me, treating me like I'm your boyfriend slash a human, never talking down to me, making me feel less than you. Yeah, this is good shit. I think respect is huge. Respect is one of the pillars, no doubt. God, I feel like there really was a lack of respect in my last relationship when I look at it objectively. Like my ex really adored me in a lot of ways, but I don't think she respected me near the end of the relationship, because if I mean truly, um and maybe it's not so much a respect issue as much of it was just like a losing focus issue, you know what I mean? Like when you're depressed and going through shit, like you become a bit selfish, as weird as that sounds. And I think you just hyper focus on your own suffering, and you forget a lot of things that are happening around you and a lot of people that are around you, and you don't really realize what's right in front of you. So maybe the lack of respect that I was perceiving at that point, and those points in my last relationship, was more so a result of just the lack of, um, you know, good mental health, really, which makes sense. But the result's still the same. She did not respect me as like a person at points, like doing things blatantly in front of other people that was disrespectful to me in our relationship, doing things behind my back that was disrespectful to me in our relationship, flirting with my sister, like really fucked up shit on paper. And things that honestly I like contemplate whether that was, I mean, in my book, it is cheating, like on paper, but like obviously the circumstances and the way that she viewed it were not that. So I don't know. I think it was just clearly disrespectful actions, but they were done for reasons that I understand more, um, now that I look back on, and I wouldn't just pin them down as like she was trying to be a fucking dick, you know? Um, and I don't think disrespect is really usually that the case, that like someone's intentionally trying to disrespect you. I think disrespect stems from like a lack of understanding, and a lack of like I said, like self-care and like respecting yourself. Um I don't know. Like there's there's a lot of factors there, but I think it's so important to maintain that, and I think that starts with yourself. More than anything, you have to respect yourself. And if you truly respect yourself, you will be with someone who you also really respect and view on the same level as you. I think that's so important. Um, to like really look at someone and be like, this human is equal to me. And obviously you should feel that way about every human, right? But I think there's a deeper sense of understanding that concept when you're with someone in a relationship. Um, and really feeling and seeing and experiencing the humanness that exists within all of us so directly and so closely by being vulnerable and open and everything. Um, you really see that clearly, and I've definitely seen that clearly in all of my relationships. Um, and I think that's where a lot of my respect usually stems from, is experiencing that. But also, it should start right away. You know, even just meeting someone, I think you have to respect the way that you talk to them. I think I always I try my best to like avoid being like overtly sexual and kind of doing things too quickly, or just being kind of presumptuous, I guess. Um, which I think is a good quality to have generally, but everyone's different too, you know. It really depends on circumstances with that kind of stuff. But again, it's just like being a kind person is a big part of that too. You know, just not being um rude, obviously, like not being rude, not being kind of not assuming a lot about another person, not thinking that they are a certain way because of a hobby that they have, or an interest that they have. A lot of that stuff is what respect means to me. Like just not giving someone benefit of the doubt with like everything, you know. And obviously not overlooking very basic glaring faults. Like that's again, you have to respect yourself enough to recognize those things, but it's a balance, right? You have to pinpoint the things that are, you know, like, yes, this is what makes them human, this is what is beautiful about them, whatever, and also respect the things that make them human in negative ways too, you know, like the faults and the ugly aspects of ourselves, and the things that are not as pretty on paper. They're all encompassing, and you kind of got to take that all in and be like, you know what, this person is whole. This is a whole ass person. This is a whole human being. This is someone that deserves my respect. Um, but that really, I mean, that's everyone, right? I think it starts with viewing everyone like that, and really kind of understanding that on a deeper level, in my opinion. But it just gets deeper when you get to really connect with someone romantically, in my opinion. Maybe it helps me at least understand it on a more worldly level as well. Um, so yeah. But yeah, the other part of it, understanding the way I want to live my life as an individual, that's huge. I mean, yeah, this needs to go both ways, obviously. Um, People are their own people, right? Like there are hobbies and things that I like that I know for a fact a lot of people don't like or are not as into as I am, and vice versa, right? So it's like you have to respect that those things are part of a person when you meet them, and as you get into a relationship with them, like there needs to be some separation of like, okay, you're going to do your thing sometimes, I'm going to do my thing sometimes, and still have that freedom, because I think that's really important to feel free to still be your own person, the person that you were before you were in a relationship with this person, and kind of nurture that part of you and keep it alive as whatever parts that you want to keep alive, right? And there will be new parts too that grow and flourish with this person. So like new things that you discover kind of intersect, whether it's like your hobbies or likes or dislikes, things that you kind of maybe even come up with when you're in the relationship, like starting a new hobby with that person. That can be really cool. And I think that should happen, honestly, like discovering new things with a person that is new for both of you. And obviously, also being able to show someone a little glimpse of your loves, and the other person being able to do that as well, and kind of just trading things and kind of, yeah, I think that shit is awesome. And I think that's so important because it's like you have to acknowledge that like the person that you're with was their own person before they met you, and they have accumulated so much of themselves over their life, and have so much to show and kind of express in so many different ways. And I don't know, like you don't want to just like inform, I guess, when you get into a relationship and be like, all right, well, you're this way, so I'm gonna, kind of go along with your things and you go along with mine, and it's whatever. No, it's like you have to open yourself up completely, I think, over time, and really show someone the wide, broad spectrum of you as a person, and the things that you were in the past, the things that you are now, and the things that you want to be in the future. Those are all such important things to share with someone, I think, if you want to be truly vulnerable and connect with them on a deeper level. So I do think that has a lot to do with it. Um, General respect when talking to me, treating me like I'm your boyfriend, human. Yeah, I kind of already talked about that. Obviously, if you're talking down to me, it's over. I've been in relationships where people were talking down to me. I've been there too many times, and I could not imagine being with someone or even talking to someone, dating someone, not even in a relationship, and having them talk down to me. It would be done before it even started. I have too much respect for myself at this point, and I've already been there, done that. Um, Making me feel less than, yeah. I mean, God, it feels going into this potential new thing. Uh, there is a real sense of like I know I'm not stupid at this point. Like obviously there's some naivety to being 25 years old, of course, but there's also a real sense of, I guess, pride and like knowing that I have when it comes to like things that I've experienced relationship wise and life wise, things that I understand deeply, things that I know that I can't unknow, um, or things that I can't forget. I don't know. Like obviously there's still little traps and things here and there, but on a larger scale sense, I don't think I would ever get into a relationship that is abusive, or allow someone to abuse me even a little bit at this point. Which is a good feeling. I know the signs really well at this point, and I know um how a person acts, and how it kind of leads to more abusive tendencies. So yeah, I don't know. My last relationship was not abusive at all, and I'm happy to say that it was probably I mean, it was the only long term relationship I had that wasn't abusive, which is a beautiful thing. Um, yeah, and you got to be grateful for that. I guess as weird as it sounds, like a lot of people are in abusive relationships. It's sad. I think a lot of relationships are, they almost seem inherently abusive, and people normalize that, but it should never be normal, and you should never accept that. And I know I never could in the past, and I know I never will now. Just on a really deep level, it's just never gonna happen again. I won't let it. So yeah. Oh, this is an interesting one. Involvement in sex life, caring about it, being active, but also being understanding of lulls, also caring enough to contribute to it and want to try new things, initiate sex sometimes, be open. Hell yeah. I mean, come on. This is huge. I mean, sex life, I think, is usually a symptom of a good sex life is a symptom of a good relationship rather than a good sex life being or a good relationship being a symptom of a good sex life, you know what I mean? So like if you're connecting really well, if you're being vulnerable, open, caring, have good communication, respect for each other, I think it naturally kind of tends to be the case that you are going to have a good sex life. But I do believe there is something to be said about someone's sexual identity and where they're at as a person sexually. And that's a very unique thing. For me personally, I feel very confident in my sexuality and where I'm at as a person, and I feel very confident being able to build and maintain like a healthy sex life with any person that I end up being with. But there are a lot of people who have past trauma related to sex, and past a lot of issues related to sex and things that are very complicated when it comes to like being able to create like a healthy sex life. So yeah, I mean, when you're meeting someone for the first time, it is kind of scary to know that, you know, you don't know what you're walking into in that regard. But at the same time, you got to acknowledge that like everyone is their own sexual being, right? Like I do believe that unless you're asexual, obviously everyone's horny, right? Like everyone has sexual thoughts and things, and you know, all of those feelings are there for most people. Um, but like I think it's one thing to have that yourself and have that when you're single and when you're alone. And it's another thing to share that with another person and cultivate an entire new kind of sexual relationship with another human being. It's very vulnerable, it's very intimate, and it can be very tricky to do properly and also maintain. That's been my biggest struggle is like a lot of my relationships started out great sex, great connecting, you know, all that stuff, you know, things were great for months, and then it just drops off sharply. And I do think that it usually can be attributed to like, again, relationships kind of having issues and things kind of dropping off in other ways in the relationship before they drop off sexually. But at the same time, there's a lot of complicated things there. Yeah, I mean, I can think of things with my ex where there were just personal things that she was struggling with mentally that kind of caused our sex life to be difficult. And honestly, at times, even for me, I remember feeling just like not horny, and like just not in the mood to have sex. And who knows why that was at the time, but it just was the way it was for certain points of our relationship. So shit like that can happen. And I think being able to understand that is huge. But also, I don't know, I do think it is important to like still try and maintain some sexual relationship even when you're not feeling particularly inclined to do so. Like you can't always just rely on being purely horny and like wanting to fuck. Um, I think there also has to be a huge aspect of it that is just purely intimate and kind of showing love physically in a sexual way. I think that's really important for me and for a lot of people that I know. So like being able to maintain that even when you're not being driven by just that primal, you know, fucking horny energy is really important, you know? Like doing things that are sexually intimate doesn't always have to be, you know, just like fucking, obviously. Um, could just be cuddling naked. It could be kissing each other's bodies. It could just be running your hands and fingers down each other's bodies and rubbing lotion on each other. Like lightly playing with each other. You know, like there's just so many things that are like really lovely to experience and keep doing that don't necessarily need to be just sex either. Um, and obviously, even I do think having sex is important though. Um, and it's not, again, it doesn't need to be penetration, I know, but I don't know. Like, it really depends on the people too and what each person is wanting individually. I think that's one of the hardest things is to like get in sync with another person. Um, yeah, like, cause sometimes you're just not there mentally and the other person is, and vice versa. So it's like sometimes you almost do have to compromise. Like, I don't think you should necessarily be like, oh, I'm not horny at all, so I'm just gonna force myself to have sex. Hell no. Um, but I do think that like there's a difference between being like I am like super anti like wanting to have sex at all right now. Like I'm 0% horny. Like there's no way I could be even turned on at all. And there's a difference between that and like being like 5 or 10% like, yeah, I'm not really horny, but like, if you do a few little things here and there, then like maybe we can, like there's just, I think just having somewhat of an openness to it. And obviously you can't always control this. Our libidos are all over the place and super weird. And mentally it's kind of a weird thing to conceptualize about, but I do believe that there needs to be an awareness of like how this is going on over a long period of time, and you don't want to get complacent and not being able to compromise sometimes, and also just be like, I may not be feeling super horny, but I'm open to fucking around and just connecting on an intimate level sometimes, even if I'm not super into it on a mentally sexual level. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. I think it does. Um, but yeah, also the trying new things aspect of it is really important. I think keeping things fresh and active and kind of moving along is important. It doesn't need to be all the time, obviously. And there's only so many fucking things that you are willing and or want to try. But I do think over a long, long period of time, it's always great to introduce new things, new toys, new ways of doing things. Um, and also just like kind of cycling through things and not always just doing the same positions, the same kind of routine sexual things that get both of you off. Um, and again, like, yeah, I don't know. There's got to be variety, I think, is what's more important. You don't necessarily need to try a new fucking thing every week. But I think just kind of cycling through the things that both of you and your partner do like is really important, and kind of varying the way that you do things is really huge. Um, Initiating sex is a huge thing as well. Holy fuck. There definitely is something really complicated about that because, like I was saying, one person can be like not really there mentally. Um, they're not really in the mood. So it's like, and one person is. So it's like, usually the case is that the person who is more turned like horny is the one that is going to be initiating. But this depends on a lot of other factors too, you know? It depends on your general level of like confidence, how good you're feeling about yourself that day, that moment. Um, and also just like things that have been happening in your relationship recently. Yeah, there's like a lot of there's a lot of weird like pettiness that can come up sometimes too. Like if you feel like if you've been like lightly rejected recently, like you tried to initiate and like your partner didn't want to, then there's like a sense of like, oh, well, I'm not going to try again. Like you have to really, and this goes with like all aspects of a relationship, like you have to forgive and also communicate about these things and also keep moving along, and keep trying, even if it's not always like working out in your favor or working the way you want, working out perfectly. So like I think honestly both people need to be like initiating back and forth and kind of keeping somewhat of an equal playing field in that regard. Because if just one person is initiating all the time, that shit fucking sucks. Ugh. I mean, really, really sucks. There's so many great ways to initiate that are not like super direct either. Like casual initiation, just like lightly touching, kind of easing into things. Oh, that's the good shit. Come on. I mean, I really appreciate just like casual initiation and just being like, chill about it. It doesn't need to be like, you want to fuck, you know? It doesn't need to be super direct, super obvious. But that can be nice too. Don't get me wrong, that can be nice too. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It just you need to really be aware of like all those things and just like, you know, not just forget that like, oh shit, like I am in a relationship with this person and they like sex and I like sex, like I don't know, just keeping a sense of like aliveness within like both of your sexual identities, which also again goes back to the thing I was saying before. Like you need to like connect with yourself sexually, I believe. Whether that's through like masturbating, watching porn, whatever. I think you need to keep a sexual relationship open with yourself, and nurture that. And as a result, it usually ends up bleeding into your sexual relationship with your partner. And it should be a two-way street. Again, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. It's not even just like masturbating. You could be reading shit. You could be just like thinking about shit. Like I don't know. There's just maintaining a sexual awareness, I guess, is a good way to put it. I think it's important. Yeah. Um, and obviously the importance of it varies depending on how important it is to you, right? For me, it is fairly important, I think. But again, it fluctuates so much throughout a relationship, so I don't want to say it's always important and it can never not be important, right? When personal shit is going on and you're fucking depressed or like things are happening in your life that are really stressful, you're not gonna want to be fucking usually. And I get that, and I think it's super weird when people like put numbers on like how often should you be having sex? How often, like how long can you go without sex without it becoming a problem? Like, no, there's no numbers that mean anything. It's just the circumstances of your relationship, what's normal for you, what's normal for your partner, what's going on in your relationship. I mean, it's way more nuanced than that. And I think it's silly to make a numbers game out of it. And then the last point, let's see. Getting complacent, not doing little things, becoming too comfortable in the relationship and expecting things to just be okay. Understanding how much work a relationship needs and understanding specifically what my needs are and how I feel love. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much everything I've been saying. This whole video. Getting complacent in any way, yeah. I mean, it is mostly little things though. You can't forget the little things. You really fucking can't. Like it really every little thing that you do, every little thing that you say, every little fucking minute thing that you don't really think much about has an effect on your relationship. And it all adds up in ways that you don't even realize sometimes. So it's really important to like maintain your sense of awareness and how your actions and thoughts and feelings are affecting another person. Um, and obviously, I think that starts with yourself, like it does with everything. Um, but yeah, becoming too comfortable in the relationship, expecting things to just be okay. That happened in my last relationship, hard fucking core from both of our ends. Just being like, oh, whatever, like we're chilling, like we're just doing our thing. Becoming complacent and comfortable can be so easy because you're just like, oh, this is good enough. In my head, I don't believe that like relationships should just be like, like this is okay. Like I don't think that's acceptable. Like of course there's points where shit is going on and you're again, shit's going on in one person's life or both people's lives, and like you can't expect the relationship to be like super awesome during those moments, right? And I get that, but it's a temporary thing. And I think when you're judging a relationship, you shouldn't be judging it by those temporary little stints of time where things are going on in each person's lives. There's always shit going on, right? But I'm talking about bigger things, like bigger events and moments of serious suffering for one person or another. Um, I think in a grand scheme picture, ideally your relationship should be in a good to great spot. And obviously that's a hard measurement to say like what is good, what is great, what does that even mean? Um, but I think you should just be striving for it to be as great as you can make it. Um, and not like trying to min max and like make everything fucking great and perfect for each person, but like just striving. I don't know, striving to like make your partner feel loved all the time and striving to have fun, do new things, grow together, connect in all the different ways. Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes hand in hand with not being stagnant as a person, you know? There's a lot of moments as a person where you're just like, yeah, I'm not really progressing, I'm not growing. And obviously you can feel that way in a relationship too. The bond that you have is almost like a separate entity. It's a unique thing that you have, and it needs to be nurtured and cared for, and it should be growing. Not all the time, right? Like you can't expect a fucking you're going to be staring at a plant and expecting it to grow as you're watching it, right? A lot of things take a lot of these things take time in a relationship. Really growing like a strong foundation and being able to see something beautiful come out of it. Yeah, it takes a long fucking time. I mean, I haven't even been in relationships for like that long. And the longest relationship I've been in was 2 years. You know, like I can't even fathom how it is being in a relationship for like 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 years. Like, holy fuck. But everything that you do adds up. I know that at least in my limited experience with relationships. So, like, I don't know. I think you just got to be cognizant of that and, always try to be aware of how you're contributing or not contributing to the relationship and its overall growth and feeling of contentness that each person has. Um, and yeah, I think the part understanding how much work a relationship needs, understanding specifically what my needs are and how I feel. Yeah, I mean, there's I do. This is such a contentious thing because it's like some people are like, oh, relationships are such hard work. Like, I need so much work. Like, yes, to some degree, and at certain points, absolutely. But I do also believe if you really, I mean, first of all, if you pick a really good partner, and you have a really good foundation that you build with this partner, I don't really necessarily believe that relationship is like super complicated and difficult. And maybe that's different than just saying it's hard work. I do think it is work, no doubt about it. But it definitely should be work that you enjoy, and it definitely is work that's worth doing. Honestly, and I don't know. I think it's like obviously there's gonna be times where it doesn't even feel like work. Like you're just fucking vibing, you're having a great time. And then there's gonna be times where you're like, okay, well, fuck, yeah, we really got to work through this. We got to talk this out. We got to figure out what's causing issues and this and that can be tough. But even that, like stuff should not feel like a chore or an obligation. It's something you should want to do. And I think that's one of the biggest facets of what makes a relationship work is like truly wanting to do it. There's no external driving force. And like, I think people depend on, just pure love, their feeling of love as a motivator to like make a relationship work. I don't think that's enough. At least in my experience, it's not enough. Love is just one feeling. And there's so many feelings that we have as people. And I don't think you can really depend on any one of them because feelings are impermanent and they will come and go and be replaced by other feelings. So it's like what you can depend on is just a sense of duty and like diligence when it comes to being in a relationship. Like, this is my person. I'm choosing this to be my person. I'm choosing to put all of my effort and all of my, I mean, not all of it, but like I'm choosing to put my effort and time and love and care and everything into it because I want to. And I know that on some deeper level. Um, and it's not dependent on if I'm always feeling loving and attracted and super great and awesome about this person. It's not dependent on that. It's just I'm choosing to love this person because I want to. And I also think it needs to come from an even deeper level of understanding that love is something that we all have within ourselves. And it's something that we can choose to express for all humans. So I think it's that. And on top of that, just an extra layer of I'm choosing to love this person even more, particularly because they're my partner, you know? and I'm choosing this person as my partner. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Honestly, I really do. But it's a hard decision to make and actually follow through with in all the ways that you need to follow through. And I think that's really the biggest factor in a relationship working is if both people really decide to do that and continue to decide to do that for, I mean, ever, right? Like that's really one of the only measurements of a relationship working properly for both people over a long period of time is like if you're both choosing to really make it work. And people view that in so many different ways, right? Like a lot of married couples that I know will be like, "Oh yeah, we're making it work," and I know in the background they're fucking physically and verbally abusing each other and all this shit. I don't think that's making it work. I truly don't. I think making it work should still be healthy, right? There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be moments of tension. There's going to be um, hard discussions and things that moments of all this stuff. It all is there. Like it's not just all sunshine and rainbows, right? But at the end of the day, there should be no abusive, fucking obvious, fucked up shit happening in a relationship. And I think if you choose to put up with that, that's not putting in work. That's just accepting something that's inherently fucked up and that should not work and that should not be even trying to work. Because if one person is choosing to be abusive, that's not love. It's just not. Regardless of what the reason is or why why they are being that way, it does not fucking matter. The result is still the same. It's like a poison. It's like once it's in your system, you can't expect yourself to be healthy, right? You're done. It's dead. But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. This felt pretty cathartic to make, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I feel pretty good about future prospects of being in a relationship. Holy fuck, that was like an hour. Wow. Well, yeah, that was a pretty good talk about things. Yeah, I don't know. I think I said everything I wanted to say. I hope people can relate to this, feel this, understand this, whatever the fuck. I'm talking too much. I'm probably just gonna stop the video now. Okay. I love you all. I love myself. Mwah.